The Deadly Curse of the Jukun King, a tale of betrayal, power, and the wrath of the gods. I still hear his name when the wind howls through the empty halls of Kwararafa. Abgila. I was there the night he was swallowed by the earth, the night our once great kingdom was cursed forever. I saw it all. I lived it. And if you listen carefully, you may feel what I felt. The terror, the regret, and the weight of what we did. But before I tell you how it ended, you must understand how it began. I was just a boy when Abgila was born, the son of King Odiru. The midwives whispered that he came into this world under a sky split in two, half sunlight, half darkness. They said it was a sign, a warning. The elders claimed a child born under such an omen would be either a savior or a destroyer. King Odiru, his father, ignored them. He raised Abgila to be strong, to fear no man, and to take what he wanted. And that is exactly what he did. I was there the first time he killed a man. We were just boys, watching from behind the trees as our warriors raided a thief village. But Abgila, he was different. He didn't watch. He took up a spear, ran into battle, and drove the blade into a man's chest without hesitation. When the battle was over, the warriors cheered him. They said he was destined to rule. But the high priest, our own dog, he watched in silence. I saw the way his hands trembled. Even then, the gods were watching. Years passed. King Odiru grew old and weak, and Abgila, impatient, hungry for power, did something unthinkable. One night, while the king feasted, Abgila poisoned his own father's drink. I was there when King Odiru clutched his throat, his eyes wide with terror. His own son sat beside him, watching him die, his face stone cold and emotionless. By morning, Abgila was crowned king, and that was the day our kingdom began to rot. As king, Abgila was ruthless. He took whatever he wanted, lands, gold, and even people. But the worst came when the priests asked him to honor the gods. They brought a white ram for sacrifice, an offering to Chido, the god of balance. But Abgila, he laughed. A king bows to no one. I remember how the skies darkened that very moment. The priests begged him, but he refused the gods to their faces. And the gods? They never forget an insult. Then came the day Abgila's fate was sealed. There was a woman, Zuzua, the river priestess. She was beautiful, but she was sacred, untouchable, the god's own voice on earth. But Abgila, he took her by force. I remember her screams. I remember how the river, our sacred river, turned black the very next morning. She was gone, vanished beneath the waters. But before she disappeared, she left us with a curse. You will know suffering like no king before you. Your name will never be spoken without fear. Your kingdom will die with you. And with that, the gods awakened. The first sign came with Abgila's firstborn son, a healthy boy, strong and proud. Until one night, he woke up screaming, his skin blackening like burnt wood, his body cold as stone. By morning, he was dead. Then came the second sign. Our crops, they stopped growing. The land, once rich and fertile, became dry, cracked, and cursed. By the time the third sign came, even the bravest among us began to whisper of doom. That fourth sign, the dead no longer rested. It began with whispers at night, voices calling Abgila's name from the darkness. Then, we started seeing figures in the palace halls, shadows moving when no one was there. Abgila laughed at us, called us cowards. But we knew something was wrong, and when the warriors who betrayed him began dying in unnatural ways, one drowned on dry land, another burned without flames touching him, we knew the gods had come to collect the dead. That was when the priests and elders turned against Abgila. They gathered in secret, whispering about how to end this rule before the gods took us all. I was there, hiding in the shadows, hearing them plot. I was too afraid to speak, but before they could strike, Abgila found out, and then the earth itself turned against him. I will never forget that night. The people had gathered to witness Abgila's downfall. His own warriors turning against him. They dragged him to the temple, forced him to kneel before the gods he mocked. But when the executioner raised his blade, something went terribly wrong. The ground began to tremble. The air grew heavy, and then the earth cracked open. Abgila screamed as a black mist rose around him. His eyes, they glowed red. And then, in a voice that was not his own, he spoke. "Did you think you could kill me? I will never leave you." And before our very eyes, the earth swallowed him whole. Just like that, he was gone. But his curse never left. We thought it was over, but the land never healed. One by one, people fled. Houses were left untouched. The palace stood empty, haunted by whispers and shadows. And so, the great kingdom of Quadarafa was abandoned. Its name now spoken only in fear. And me, I am the last one who remembers. So I tell you this, never speak his name at night. Never forget his curse. The night after Abgila was swallowed by the earth, I had a dream. No, not a dream. A warning. I saw him standing at the edge of a river, his eyes glowing like burning embers. He reached for me, his voice crawling into my bones. "You think it's over?" I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. But when I turned my head to the side, I saw something that nearly stopped my heart. A handprint, burned black, on the wall beside my bed. The next day, the priests called for a cleansing ritual. We gathered in the temple, praying, lighting incense, begging the gods to accept Abgila's punishment and release us from his curse. But as we chanted, something terrible happened. The wind stopped, the air grew thick, and then, from the shadows of the temple, a whisper rose. "He still walks among you." The torches snuffed out all at once, and in the darkness, someone screamed. We found the high priest, Aondo, dead. The next morning, his face was frozen in a silent scream, his eyes wide and glassy, his hands clawed into his own throat. No blood, no wounds. But on his chest, burned into his skin, was a single word, Abgila. The people of Quadarafa began to fear the water. The river, our lifeline, had changed. At sunrise, it ran clear, but by nightfall, it turned thick and red, like blood. One woman, desperate to prove it was just a trick of the mind, waded into the water. She did not come out. Only her footprints remained in the wet sand. 3 nights later, we heard something even worse. Laughter. It echoed through the palace halls, deep and menacing. Abgila's laughter. We locked our doors, huddled together in fear. But the laughter did not stop, and the worst part, it was coming from inside empty rooms. Rooms no one had entered since Abgila vanished. By the next moon, people began disappearing. A child playing outside was there one moment, gone the next. His toy lying abandoned in the dirt. A fisherman set out on the river and never returned. A mother woke up to find her baby's cradle empty, though the doors had never opened. There was no blood, no bodies, only the whispers in the dark. The elders, desperate, called for a final meeting. "We must leave Quadarafa," they said. "Burn it to the ground and never look back." But the warriors, still clinging to pride, refused. "This is our home. We will fight. But how do you fight something you cannot see? That evening, the sky turned black with crows. Thousands of them, circling the palace, watching us. And when they finally descended, they did not come for food. They came for us. Screams filled the night as the birds attacked without mercy, their beaks tearing flesh, their claws scratching eyes. By dawn, 20 more people were gone. And in the palace courtyard, scratched into the stone by unseen hands, were the words, "You will never escape me." That night, the remaining priests gathered in secret. They whispered, "The only way to break the curse is to finish what we started." They meant digging up Abgila's body and burning it. But there was one problem. There was no body, only an empty pit where the earth had swallowed him. But something else lay in its place, a single black crown covered in blood. And when the priest who touched it tried to speak, he dropped dead where he stood. At sunrise, the remaining elders decided, we must leave Kwara Rafa tonight. A group of 40 men, women and children gathered their belongings and made for the gates under the cover of darkness. I stayed behind, too afraid to move, but I watched from the palace tower. As the first man stepped beyond the gates, something moved in the shadows. A whisper, a low chuckle, then a scream. The man's body contorted unnaturally before he collapsed, lifeless. The others ran, but the moment they touched the gate, they vanished into thin air. No trace, no sound, only the echo of Abgila's laughter in the wind. By morning, the remaining villagers discovered something even more terrifying. Everyone who had even thought about escaping had a black mark on their skin, a burned, charred symbol on their wrists. One by one, they began to change. The first woman with the mark stood in the marketplace, unmoving, unblinking. By sunset, she was whispering to herself. By nightfall, she clawed out her own eyes. Those who were marked would not survive the week, and I was one of them. Fear turned to paranoia. People started accusing each other. You brought this upon us. You sided with Abgila. You are cursed. The village became a place of suspicion and bloodshed. One elder was stoned to death by his own people. A mother, accused of being a witch, was thrown into the Red River. The curse had done what no enemy ever could. It turned us against ourselves. The last remaining priests made one final attempt. We will summon the gods themselves, they declared. They prepared a ritual, sacrificing a bull, chanting under the moon, lighting sacred fires. For the first time in weeks, the air felt still. For a moment, we believed. But then, from the shadows of the temple, a voice mocked us. You think the gods will save you? The fire extinguished itself. The bull dropped dead, split open from the inside, and standing among us where no one had stood before was Abgila, smiling. That night, we faced the true wrath of the curse. The skies turned black. The wind carried screams from nowhere. People who were alive in the morning were found headless by dusk. The palace itself began to rot, its stones crumbling, its pillars sinking. We ran through forests, across rivers, over mountains. We ran for days. At first, we were 30. By the time we reached the next kingdom, we were only 7. The others, they vanished. Some disappeared in their sleep, their footprints leading nowhere. Some were found dead, their faces frozen in silent screams. And one night, I woke up to find a man walking into the dark, as if drawn by something only he could hear. He never came back. We arrived at the kingdom of Jukun, hoping for shelter. But when the king's men saw us, they refused to let us in. "You bring something unnatural," they said. "Your shadows move when you do not." We begged, we cried, but as night fell, they forced us away, sealing their gates. And that night, the city of Jukun heard laughter on the wind. By morning, the gates stood open, the city empty. Not a single soul remained. We traveled in silence, knowing now that no place would ever accept us. One by one, my companions lost hope. The woman named Iye walked into the river and let it take her. The old man Owo sat beneath a tree and never moved again. And when we made camp one evening, we counted ourselves and found we were only 6, but no one could remember who had vanished. By the time we reached the grasslands, only 3 of us remained. A mother, a young son, and me. The boy, barely 6 years old, had not spoken since we left Quadarafa. But one night, as we sat by the fire, he turned to his mother and whispered, "Mama, he's here." The fire died instantly, and when the moonlight flickered, I saw it, a shadow standing right behind him. The mother ran. She abandoned her son, screaming into the night, disappearing into the endless plains. The boy stood still, staring into the darkness as if waiting for something. I knew then there was no escape, so I made the only choice left to me. I walked back to Quadarafa. When I reached the ruins, I saw something horrifying. The city was standing again. The palace, the marketplace, the river. It was all as it had been before the curse, as if nothing had ever happened. And at the city gate, waiting for me, stood Abgila, smiling. "You should have never left," he whispered. I wanted to run, to scream, but my feet would not move. And then, darkness. When I awoke, I was standing inside the palace. I knew this place, but something was wrong. The torches burned with blue flames. The air was thick, as if filled with whispers. And in the throne room, there he was, Abgila, sitting on the king's throne, wearing the black crown. "You never truly left," he said. I wanted to argue, to scream that this was not real, but then I turned, and I saw them, the elders, the warriors, the priest who died in the temple, all of them standing there, watching me. And I realized I had never escaped. I had been here all along. Some say Quadarafa was lost to time, that it faded from the earth, buried beneath sand and sky, but I know the truth. It is still there. And if you listen closely, if the night is too quiet, if the wind stops blowing, you will hear it, a whisper in the dark. You should have never left. And somewhere, in the ruins of a forgotten kingdom, a man walks. A man who was once me. A man who will never leave. Because the curse never dies. The tale of Quadarafa is not just a story, it is a warning. Some curses do not fade with time. Some voices never go silent. And some who leave never truly escape. If you ever find yourself in a place where the air is too still, where shadows move without light, and where whispers call your name, run. But know this, you may already be too late. If you enjoy this story and want more chilling African folktales, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below.